Today, we are continuing with our Summit speaker series and talking all about stepping back.
I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this.
All right, we are so excited today to have Dr. Erin Careless with us. Erin was a guest last year on the podcast in the lead up to last year's Stepmom Summit, and here we are again a year later in the lead up to the second annual Stepmom Summit, and we have Erin back with us, and I'm so excited. Erin became a stepmom when she met her partner Matt in 2014. That same year, she became a Certified Stepfamily Coach and founded Steplife as a way to share her experience and provide support to other women navigating stepfamily life. Erin and Matt married in 2015, and in addition to her stepkids Oliver and Waverleigh, they are parents to Grace and Finn. All of those are great names. I love those names. Erin works in adult education, and her coaching involves reflective practice. Her PhD research focused on stepmothering, and it is her passion to empower stepmoms to find the role in their family that works for them, which is something I think we all struggle with. Mm-hmm. And in addition to her awesome background in academia and in practical stepmom coaching, she happens to be the chair of the advisory board for Stepfamily Magazine, which, if you're a regular listener, you know that is where I am co-owner and co-CEO with Beth McDonough. Erin walks that fine line between being a true academic expert and a practitioner, and so I'm so excited to have her back today. You probably remember she was a guest last year on episode 30, which I will link to in the show notes. But oh my gosh, what a difference a year makes.
Welcome back, Erin. Goodness. Yes, it does. Such a difference. And yet it feels like that was no time at all. And so excited for the next summit. I can't believe that was a year ago. Crazy.
I can't either. And I have to tell you, before we hit record on this, Erin and I were chatting and just like, oh my gosh, it's been forever since we talked, and it doesn't feel like it's been a year. So let's jump into all of this, Erin. There's so much. Let's talk first about the Stepfamily Magazine Advisory Board, which we are so excited to have you in that role and leading our advisory board efforts. Tell us a little bit about what that is, why it's important, what you're doing, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, this was, I think, the most exciting thing I've been asked to take part in and be a part of. And I'm so happy about it. And I'm really proud to be a part of this group. So, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is that there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of advice out there. There's a lot of do this, don't do that, say this, don't say that. And so much of it is based on, what one person thinks or what might have worked for them. It's so much of it is opinion. And so the advisory board is an amazing way to bring a bunch of experts together who research this stuff, evidence-based research step family life, step family experiences. And we use this group to inform what you do for Stepfamily Magazine and its growth as a business. And I think that's so important because you want to get the right messages out there. And, of course, everyone has an opinion and something will work for you and it might not work for me. But when there's evidence-based research behind it, it's very different. And I did research myself around step parenting. And that's, when I coach or when I write articles, that's what I use in addition to other people's research. And it just gives that depth, I think, to what you do, what you publish, and to the opinions out there.
So when you talk about evidence-based information, so like you said, there are like a million voices out there in the stepfamily space and growing every day, which I think is really great because it shows that there is a real interest in step family issues. And obviously this is, we are a population, the step family population that, hasn't traditionally been served by the usual, paths of therapy and all that kind of stuff. A lot of therapists don't know how to deal with blended families and everything. So,
Yeah.
It's great that all these resources are springing up. But when you talk about evidence-based, what does that mean to, the average stepmom? Why should they look for resources that are evidence-based versus, have cool reels on Instagram, which is great.
Yeah.
I wish I could do. I'm not a reels person. I do them sometimes, but it's something I don't love.
Well, and this is something that, this is just a part of the world that we live in right now. Like I can put on a really cool, flashy thing on Instagram. I can't actually do that, but someone can. And, the prettier it looks or the cooler, the images or whatever, we tend to like take that at face value or believe it or read it more intently. But evidence-based research is, a process that you learn. I mean, you study how to do research. So, you examine all of the literature in a particular area. You read it with a critical lens. So you're looking at, well, this is this person's background. So this might impact the reason they're, giving this kind of advice. You get multiple different perspectives from different parts of the world or different parts of the country, and you distill that down into something that's digestible for your reader. So it's not about, oh, I did this, now everyone has to do it because it's going to work for all of you. But it's like, as an example, for my research, I interviewed women all across Canada. So literally from Newfoundland to British Columbia, the two ends of our country, and asked them their experiences. And there were common experiences amongst all of those women. So that tells me that must be a fairly common experience for most stepmoms. So you're not just taking it wasn't just me, and I had very different experiences from some of them. But, you're really examining a broader sample of the population and, doing that, I guess, digging deeper into what else has been written and what's the purpose behind that other material. So it's a very thoughtful process and it's a reflective process, but it's also a critical process. So Cameron's telling me to do this. Well, why might she be telling me to do that? And why might her experience differ than mine? So it's kind of bringing that rigor to.
That's a great way to explain it. We're so lucky to have this group of 10. I don't think it's going out on a limb to say the top step family experts in the world on our advisory board. The names are, if you're in this world, the names that we've got are pretty staggering, and including Erin leading the way. And I think it's been important to Beth and I with the magazine to really have that research-based approach, because there is so much bad advice going around out there, and it's so easy to, every step family situation is different, right? And so it's so easy to speak from your own experience. But I know from my own experience, I made so many mistakes at the beginning. If I were just going to go spout off without any training, I don't think that I would be telling people anything that they should be doing. And, once I got some training, I realized that.
That is absolutely, you're right. And the nice thing that you and Beth have done too is ensure that while this group of amazing people, and that our first meeting, I was kind of like starstruck, and I were telling my husband, like, so-and-so is there. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, but you've made sure that group, while they're very well-respected academics in their field, they also represent diversity, right? So they don't all have the same experience. They're different in pretty much every way possible. And that's very important because, again, you don't want kind of a one-sided perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's been a huge priority for us, is to, make sure that we are able to not just represent different viewpoints and different experiences, but, serve step families with different experiences and different viewpoints. So, so let's talk a little bit about, you're going to be talking at the summit this year again about what you call stepping back, and that is where your expertise is. So tell me a little bit about sort of how you got interested in this idea of stepping back, and tell us a little bit about your expertise there, and then, maybe a little preview of what you're talking about at the summit, and then we'll dive in on the actual concept of stepping back a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So last year at the summit, I talked about, my kind of 6-step approach to stepping back. So once you've decided that it's for you, then this is kind of how to do it. And this year I kind of went back a couple of steps, and it's really connected to this idea of the advisory board. So I found when I was going through the hardest times as a stepmom for me, there was so much information out there about, well, you married him, you married the kids, and you've got to do this and you're expected to do that. And if you don't do A, B, and C, you're a bad stepmom and blah, blah, blah. And there was so much pressure to kind of fill a certain role. And at the same time, I was doing my own research, and I found that every single woman had a very similar experience when it came to their parenting role in their family. And I can talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And it was very similar to mine. And I was like, this is fascinating, because no matter where they lived, no matter their age, how many kids, if they had their own kids or not, there was this thread that went through everyone's story, and it was similar to mine. And that led me to both wanting to take this approach in my own life, and also wanting to write about it and to read more and to learn more and to get the message out there that you have options and you're not bound to being one particular person within your family. And I think a lot of women feel really stuck sometimes, and that they're going to disappoint people and let people down. And that just doesn't have to be the case. So that's kind of how I got into it.
I love the way that you put that you're not stuck. You have the chance to be more than what you think you can be. You don't have to sort of get pigeonholed into this one spot, because I think, and it struck me when you were talking, every stepmom I know has felt at one time or another this huge amount of pressure to either be the parent or step into what, they think is expected of them. I mean, it is such a pressure cooker role. Oh, so God. What did stepping back look like for you when you kind of figured out that this is what you needed to do? What did that look like?
Yeah. So for me, I had spent kind of the first 3 years of our relationship trying to be the mom in the house. And I, certainly never said, call me mom. That was not, it was Erin. But trying to play that role. And I think, there's lots that's tied in there around societal expectations and gender norms. And I should say, just to preempt, any questions, I'm in a relationship with a man, and not unfortunately, but just so happened that all of the participants that agreed to take part in my study were in heterosexual relationships. So again, when we talk about evidence-based, I'm really only talking about a heteronormative kind of context. There can be similar experiences in same-sex marriages, but that wasn't where my study focused. So
that's great to clarify. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I think we do try to make sure that we speak to everybody, and I think that kind of knowing who we're talking about is super helpful.
Exactly. And there are different pressures, and, some pressures are felt the same way, but certainly in a relationship with a man, I felt this kind of internal pressure, this pressure from society, I call it like the silent nod from my partner to kind of be the mom and do the mom things. And he loved it when I did that. But the problem was, it didn't work. I kept trying to make him be a different parent than he was, and it wasn't working. Like, he wasn't, even though he would say like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, he wasn't actually changing or doing those things on his own. So literally kind of 3 years of kind of butting up against this brick wall, and truly got to a point where I was like, okay, something has to change, or I'm literally, this is going to end. This relationship is going to end, because I can't continue doing this anymore. It's not working. And so I just decided that, okay, well, maybe what I think is right isn't right for him, and it isn't right for this family. And so I'm just going to let him be the primary parent. I'm going to support him in parenting the way he wants to. I'm not going to say it's the right way. It's not the right way to me, but I will support him doing that. And I'm just going to let go of my expectations for how this family functions. And at that point, my daughter was a newborn. And so I had enough to focus on myself. And I just kind of looked at her and thought, this is where I have control, right? I can make the decisions for her, and I can kind of create the structure for her. But obviously what I'm trying to do for them isn't working. And it's really, really hard to do that. And I won't pretend it was like an overnight easy process. It wasn't. And it was a lot of conversations. And I think you owe it to yourself and your partner to have conversations before you kind of make this decision. But that's basically what it looked like for me, was just letting go of the reins, not trying to change him anymore, and kind of letting them figure it out.
So tell me how your approach is different. I know, again, talking about, all of the things that you see online and other places, but, you hear a lot of people say, not my circus, not my monkeys, or, not your kids, or, whatever it is. And sort of, is that oversimplifying this concept? And what's the difference between some of what you hear people talking about with, let it go, they're not your kids, and this concept of, taking a step back?
Yeah, I think for me, and what I really talk about in the summit presentation is some of the myths that are associated with this, and then the truths that are associated with it. And so for me, it's really nuanced, because, one of the myths is that, well, if you step back, then that means you're not involved at all, right? You completely disengage. You don't get any say in anything. You've got to pick or choose. You're either fully on board or you're fully, kind of off the ship. And I don't agree with that. I think that you can, as long as you're clear, and there is this quote from, of course, Brené Brown that I love, that is, clarity is kindness. Oh my God, I love her so much. It's clarity is kindness. And that once I heard that, it just made so much sense to me, both in this part of my life, in my professional part of my life, because I'm very much the kind of person that's like, oh, you just do it however you want. But then if that person comes back to you with something they've done and you say, no, that's not really what I was looking for, well, whose fault is that? It's yours, because you weren't clear. So in this case, be very clear on the parts of this role or the parts of your life as a family that you are not going to be responsible for anymore, and then where you feel comfortable participating. So maybe you love to cook and you're totally fine cooking for the whole family. You cook for the kids, no big deal. But you've been trying to make them follow house rules, like keeping their bedrooms clean for 6 years, and it's not happening. So guess what? I am no longer going to clean up their rooms. I will close the door, and I will let you deal with the aftermath of the rotting garbage or whatever they have to deal with. So as long as you're clear with your partner about where you will be involved and where you won't be involved, then I think you can be still very much engaged, but step back from that primary parenting role. I was still very engaged in my stepkids' lives. I loved them. I just was tired of trying to create a life and a structure that my partner didn't really want. And it made me angry I was angry all the time, and it is exhausting.
It is exhausting.
It is. It really is. And it's not the way you want. You think about what that looks like to the kids. That's not who I want to be. That's not the example I want to set for them. So yeah, and then that sounds like cherry picking, right? Well, like, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that. But the thing is, if you're not being supported or you're not being respected, you don't have to do those things. You're not a doormat, right? You're not there to be the nanny or the chauffeur. You're there as a partner first, and an involved adult / parent where it feels comfortable for you. Like, I have yet to meet a woman, and please contact me if this was you. I have yet to meet a woman who was walking down the street and saw a couple kids and thought, I want to be in your life. How can I do that? Here's my dad, and he happens to be single. Like, you're there as a partner first. And because of expectations on women, I think we lose sight of that a lot, and we let ourselves get pulled into doing things that maybe don't feel comfortable, but we feel like we have to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's really a good way to put it. It seems like it's really about identifying your boundaries and kind of setting them with your partner.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And I use I kind of use a term like if then, so if you ensure that the kids are respectful, if you support me in, blah, 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 then I will do the following, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's like driving the kids to soccer practice. Okay, if you make sure that the kids are respectful and they're on time, they don't speak to me like I'm trash or whatever it is that you're having a struggle with, then I'm happy to drive them to soccer. If they're making me wait in the car for 20 minutes and then they get out and slam the door and don't say anything, then I'm not willing to do that anymore, right? So if then, what's the boundary? What do you need to be able to carry out a certain responsibility? And I don't want to make it seem like your life is a job, because it's not, but you can really kind of use a job as a good example of this, right? You don't take a job without any idea of what the expectations are, or without any conversation around, well, if I get paid and if I'm treated respectfully, then I will do my job to my fullest ability. But yet,
if only that were that easy,
right? Fairly simplistic, but we enter into relationships all the time. And every single woman I spoke to in those interviews said they did not sit down and explicitly talk to their partner about expectations.
Yep, nobody does.
Nobody does. I didn't.
No, absolutely not.
I'm like,
and even
hot.
The ones that
together, let's move in. Yeah.
and even the conversations we did have didn't really hit the stuff that ended up being an issue.
No.
We talked about like, how are we going to handle, tricky dynamics with the ex, or how are we going to tell the kids X, Y, and Z? Like, we didn't talk about, what happens, when the kids start cursing me out, or, you know what I mean? Like you don't lay that foundation. I think that's totally normal and common. But I love hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
Everything that you're saying really underscores this whole this idea of being evidence-based, because pretty much every other renowned expert or, academic who has done research in just the area of step parenting, and particularly Patricia Papernow, who is also on the advisory board, also speaking at the summit. But this idea of letting your partner do the primary parenting and you sort of serving as a support system, that is backed up by lots of evidence and lots of research that, you really don't do well when you come in like a wrecking ball and try to like not set up your own house, because you do want your own house, but like set up all the rules and be the enforcer and, enact all the discipline and all of that kind of stuff. That doesn't go well.
Absolutely. And it's like, you think sort of saying that it's obvious, but truly, again, so that was that common thread, right? Every woman I spoke to jumped in with both feet, right? Like, I'm going to heal this family. I'm going to make him happy. I'm going to make these kids have a happy home again. It's kind of like this like hero complex, even though you don't think it, but, and most of that's because your partner is like, oh, this is so wonderful. You're a great partner. You're so great with the kids, blah, blah, blah. So all of them jumped in with both feet, and every single one of them had some conflict because of that and had to end up taking a step back. And, that looked different for all of them because they all have different experiences, but it was absolutely a common thread. And there's research that I read, and what's interesting is this exact line was said by one of my participants. And I found a research paper that is titled, "It Just Happened." And it's basically women saying like, how did I end up doing this work? Like, it just happened. There was no conversation about it. And that goes back to what I refer to as the silent nod. I start doing sort of motherly things for the kids. Well, my husband seems very happy with that, so I'm going to keep doing it because it clearly makes him happy. And you kind of do this silent negotiation. And then all of a sudden, like you're managing the family calendar and you're meal planning for everyone. And if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And
it's hard to break the cycle.
It's very hard to break the cycle because you feel like it's your responsibility. And that is one line I have heard in almost every single coaching session I've done. But if I don't do it, it won't happen or it won't get done. And I've gotten really good at pushing back on that and saying like, and so what, right?
So then what happens?
What's the worst that's going to happen? Let's talk through that. If you don't get them to do their homework, what happens? So what? What's the big deal? And it's never the end of the world, right? And they'll figure it out. And it's, you don't like to kind of phrase it this way, but just to be totally blunt, if you weren't there, they would figure it out. And if you guys, God forbid, your relationship breaks down, they'll figure it out some other way.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to think that way, but when there's so much pressure on your shoulders, you kind of have to, a little bit of a reality check.
I love that idea of kind of saying, well, so if this doesn't happen, what happens next? Yeah. And then kind of playing that out and then really discovering that it's okay.
Yeah.
That you don't have to be the family savior.
That's right. They might fall on their butt and they might learn a lesson, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. I love it. This is such good advice. So for those of you that are coming to the summit this month, you're going to hear Erin go way deeper into all of this stuff. It's going to be amazing. If you have not yet signed up for the summit, head over to thestepfamilysummit.com right now. It is free to attend. It's August 25th to 27th. Erin, thank you so much for being here. This was such a great discussion. I always feel so inspired after we talk, and you have such good, just practical advice for people. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And I'm so excited. And like a free summit, you can't beat it. The names are amazing. And yeah, I'm going to really dig into the top 5 myths around stepping back and the truths that are really associated with that. And I think that helps with a lot of women that are feeling guilt about kind of letting go of the reins. So I'm very excited. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be great. So thank you. And yes, head over to the Step Family Summit so you can hear more of Erin and all of our other great speakers. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.